agriculture's contributions to the value of the product itself, I would be worried if they weren't paying something into it. I guess the question is, can we afford, from the general fund perspective, to continue to ask taxpayers to pay for it? It's the very crux of the pest eradication program discussion here today.
And I think it is a good question, and I evaluated this question over the weekend, and I looked at, do I feel comfortable spending $3.67 if it's going towards a monitoring program, which it is a large portion of that, of the plant budget of general fund, is going towards a monitoring program that picks up pests and diseases that can be a threat to our food supply. And we do have to weigh that. Is $3.67 worth protecting your food supply? If travelers are the primary...
$1.50 to protect our food supply. We streamline that and more efficient enough to still do the same job but at a lesser cost. It isn't necessarily... Right. I think taxpayers like that too. They wouldn't have to try to raise their taxes here. We are paring every single department down. So I'm not sure what $3.67 means, but I do know that $1.50 sounds a lot better in this environment. So the question is, how do you get to the $1.50? If I were to give you a target and say, get it down to $1.50, then it'd probably be a better exercise for you guys than for me to sit and figure out how to get it to $1.50.
Well, and I think you do. That is a good question to ask. I think what else though do we put at risk? We have our infrastructure is modeled off of USDA, and that's why we have not experienced foot and mouth disease outbreak, large-scale gypsy moth. The East Coast is dealing with gypsy moth right now. We don't want to deal with that. Our infrastructure is important that we sustain it.
Tell me why we don't want to deal with that, so I can just get it for the record.
I think there's actually
and who are we that don't want to deal with that? So maybe you can find
the cost of dealing with gypsy moth is what, $32 million to taxpayers.
How so?
Well, if you get a large infestation of gypsy moth, which we have not had here in the state of California, USDA I think spends what, $32 million. We have it on a chart for you, but they spend $32 million. For us, gypsy moth, I know we have not spent.
That's okay. Just tell me what. Again, let's go real slow through it. Why do we not want the gypsy moth in California? This is the very simple question. It's the reason you're justifying it. So what's the answer?
The gypsy moth is a very severe and broad-based pest of forest lands, whether it's urban or natural forest, and its preferred hosts are primarily deciduous trees. So if you look at the ability of it to survive in California, which it has occurred here in California, and we've been eradicating it, it would be widespread through California's precious forest lands and urban environment. Consequence would be, just as it is on the East Coast, plenty of pesticide applications in urban environments, plenty of pesticide applications in forested environments, and consequence to water quality and stream quality in native habitat.
Got it. Sounds like a great place for the Department of Resources to have the discussion. Sounds like a wonderful place to have that discussion. I'm wondering why we're having it at CDFA then, if that's exactly what the examples are that we're working on. We'll keep going through this, but I guess the question is, let me try to put it this way. And I'd like to get your answer on this. If we were to pull all general fund money, all of it, from invasive species, would the industry find a way to pay for it?
You would see clearly they would not have the same priorities as the public would. Let's say gypsy moth is a prime example. We found that through a traveler coming into California.
Let me ask another way. Have you ever asked them to do that?
We have asked it, and in the past when we have had budget cuts, they have picked up those programs that are important to them. Border inspection stations, I don't think they're going to pick up $11 million. And under the gray data...
Will they pick up other items then? The stuff that is important to them that we're adding to? Because whatever they pick up is a savings to us, and then we can pick up stuff they don't want to pick up. That's safety net, right? That's the whole purpose of this exercise, is to try to figure that out.
And they have picked up the nursery programs, fruit tree and grapevine, seed services. They've picked up let's see what else. Some state trapping. They've picked up pink bollworm. They've picked up some of the dairy inspection.
And why do they pick it up?
Those are critical programs to their operations.
Right. And so why should taxpayers pay for any portion of that?
The taxpayer pays for those programs that benefit protecting our food supply and our environment.
Okay, so this is the cost for food supply. So in other words, if we don't, taxpayers don't pay for this, our food supply is going to be, this is what taxpayers know they're paying for, food supply.
And I think, you know, you bring up a good point that maybe we haven't been good at articulating that, is that we do protect the food supply. Now,
we're going to go through that in a minute, but the $8.3 million of MedFly prevention,
right.
Why should the taxpayers pay for that?
This is actually one of our cornerstone programs. It is in urban areas. We do a sterile pest release program.
Why is it?
It's reduced the use of pesticides. It ensures that backyard gardens are not infested with medfly. It's actually one of our models that we would like, if we ever potentially face an infestation of some of our other pests, we would like it to model that because it reduces pesticide use and it's very effective on the taxpayer dollar.
It reduces pesticide use for food.
For backyard gardeners. I mean, we're finding medfly in backyards. We find it in Los Angeles. I mean, this is where we're finding Asian citrus psyllid. We're finding it in residential areas.
And the reason we're looking for it then is to protect backyard folks. I mean, this is the $8.3 million. This is the entire purpose of the program, to protect those backyard gardens.
Backyard and as well as our production, which is critical.
Right. Right. So if we were protecting our, I'm just trying to understand again, so this is to protect the backyard garden or the food supply in the $8.3 million?
I would say it's both.
It's both.
It is both. And that goes across the board.
Why don't you go back and ask the industry what they want to pay for? Because the state can't afford to pay for industry-driven protections. We can pay for things that fall through the cracks, because I don't know any other way to do it. I mean, how do we find savings within the budget?
And I think
It's your biggest budget expense, general fund.
It's not the biggest. The border stations is the largest in the plant division. But I think it is an important question to ask, and I think it's good that you are also asking the industry the same question.
$8 million in the trapping program alone. So,
detection.
yeah. So, the question is, we have 2 million red-corded fire ants, and then 1.1 million on fruit fly rearing facility, 8.3 million on dead fly, 2 million on light brown moth, apple moth, and $4 million on Pierce's disease. Now, I remember at a time when we were flush with cash, we were putting a lot of money towards these programs because we had cash. And back then I carried a couple of those bills. But now's an opportunity for us to really look at our very slim budget and try to figure out what items make sense to pair off or to spin off, and what items we can actually pay for. So we're asking you to go through an analysis for us to figure out in your eradication program, what we can afford, taxpayers can afford to pay for. That's the real question. And what they'd be willing to pay for. Okay? Okay, let's go through Reform 4. That was 3. Abolish the agricultural marketing function. Now, we have 54 agricultural marketing programs. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And the relationship, so I can understand this, the relationship that the marketing programs have with the department is what?
We have oversight of those marketing programs. It all depends on how they are created, whether they're marketing agreements or marketing orders, but we do have oversight when they are created in statute or a vote of those that are assessed.
And what does oversight mean? Does that mean that they were involved, we go to their meetings, we understand, we travel there? What does oversight mean when we have 54 agricultural marketing programs
I'm going to bring up the division.
Sure. You're the division?
Well, not the whole one. See, this is how lean we run it, just one man.
Tell me a little bit about the role of CDFA in these agricultural marketing functions. Let me give you 3 words of context. Are you enforcers? Are you collaborators? Or directors? What are we? What are we in this program? What role are we playing?
We play 2 primary.
And you can say your name for the record. That would be great.
My name is Bob Maxey.
Okay.
I'm the chief of the marketing branch.
What was it? And I didn't get your comment. What role?
We play essentially 2 roles with the marketing programs. One is oversight, and the other is administrative. We facilitate some of the administrative functions of the programs.
Okay. Let's go through the last one. Let's use it to handle you administrate some of the functions of some of these marketing boards. What does that mean? You call meetings, you put agendas out, you organize the marketing boards, and then how?
No, for each program, it takes usually public hearings and a referendum of assessment payers to implement a program, and there's usually a 5-year continuation procedure, either public hearing or referendum, and the department carries out those referendums. That would be the primary administrative contribution.
Now, all of these marketing programs fee-based?
Yes.
They are. Okay. And does that cover, I think I asked Rain this earlier, does it cover all costs associated with these boards? I mean, every single penny, not a penny of government taxpayer dollars thrown into this in any sense?
Yeah, they cover all of their own activities. They cover any costs borne by the department and overseeing the programs and carrying out those administrative functions.
Okay. And so they're paying for a portion of your day here today?
Yes.
They are. So your salary is broken out. Your salary is broken out in 54 different ways, roughly?
Yes.
And travel expenses to these meetings, is that covered? You just bill them? Is that how it works?
Yes, we bill them every month for our costs.
And let me ask the question, why should we be involved in this, if indeed they're all fee-based? Why should the state, what role does the state play in essence, the oversight and the administration of this? Why can't we just let them do what they do?
Well, the legislature set up the California Marketing Act and the various council and commission laws because it recognized there is a purpose to be served by the agricultural industry, having a vehicle by which it can come together, each pay their fair share of the costs to run a program that solves some industry problem or facilitates the marketing of the commodities they produce.
Why do we need to be involved in that?
The primary reason would be because it is, once they vote in a program, it is a mandatory fee on all growers and or handlers of a given commodity that makes it public funds. And by the fact that it's public funds, there's a need for government oversight.
And is there not an easier way to privatize them in a way that they wouldn't have to go? I know that the legislature created this and created a lot of things that we're now relooking at. The simple question is this the right structure given the way the boards, these marketing agreements work?
I don't know that there's a way to both privatize the programs and continue to collect a mandatory fee.
There's probably a way to deal with it, I think. There might be a way. I'm just wondering if that were the case, we would find a mechanism that wouldn't require government to be involved in this other than from the advisory and informing point of view. Would that hurt these programs? Would these marketing agreements cease to exist?
We believe there's a value in the government oversight go to the commodities concerned. I believe the growers that are paying assessments in appreciate the government oversight of the programs, and I think there's a value to the public at large.
And the reason that they value, I've never heard farmers value government involved in their entities or structure. So how does that, why do we get applauded for being involved in their entities and structures? Is it because we give our good stamp of approval on it somehow? The state of California says it's a state board and commission, and therefore all the privileges and rights thereby are pushed to them. I mean, I don't understand why the state needs to be involved in this. And I'm very, very serious with it. Why does the state have to be involved in any of these boards and commissions? I'm just trying to understand it. The value alone of the legislature or CDFA saying, you know, we're going to relinquish the state's involvement in this. I'm just trying to understand why we have to be involved. I haven't heard good reasons yet, other than the administration is public funds, therefore we have to be involved in it. I'm sure there's a way to deal with it.
Each of these programs, by the laws or the regulations that put them into effect, have certain activities that they're funded to engage in. It's the department's role to make sure that the monies they spend go to those activities or to accomplish those purposes. And I think that's it.
We don't trust them enough to do that, given that they're paying for, we're paying for us for the referees a game in the evening, or I mean, you couldn't call their own fouls, or I mean, what's the purpose of us, again, we're the enforcers? I mean, what if they do something wrong? I mean, we go in and find them, or?
We take appropriate actions.
Really? Or like what?
Well, I think the reverse question would be, there would be no oversight of these
Why don't we just
commissions
have a
or boards
sunset
at all?
on it, and they have to report every year to see if they're actually doing their job, rather than spending time of having constant oversight. Just have a sunset on these. They have to report every year or every 2 years to see if they were actually making any sense.
Well, they already do go up for a vote amongst the membership to see
Amongst
whether
themselves,
they...
but I mean, we want oversight. I mean, I'd love to see the board and commission. I'm sure, you know, once a year here, might make the good interesting. Bring an avocado board in, or bring tomatoes, and you know, some of the things we read about in the newspaper might, you know, be headed off here. We could have some review once in a while here, but because they're quasi and away from us, that's really your job. And the question is whether we should be involved at all in that, because it doesn't seem to. Well, what are the outcomes of some of these very bad things we read about in some of these boards? Things that go wrong, misspending of money, board members doing certain things they shouldn't be doing. What's the repercussion? What are you doing? What are you doing? Who's been fined? Who's been kicked off the boards? Why don't you give me a few examples of those that I just mentioned a moment ago?
Well, the Avocado Commission was referred to the Department of Justice. We have established a guidance document on how funds should be spent with the commission, and we've also required that, we've also established a schedule for auditing all of those that will be auditing them every 4 years.
Yeah. And did you send them a bill for that?
We do.
All that extra that you just mentioned, did they get
Yes.
billed for all that?
Yes, they are. That whole entire division is funded through those programs. So
Why couldn't we just, again, why couldn't we just review these periodically? We probably,
the legislature could do that. I mean, typically you do create them. You could also review them. We don't have any options.
and what if we got rid of the entire marketing department at CDFA and simply had a review? Would we save any money?
You may, you're not saving any general fund money by doing that.
You wouldn't save any general fund money because they're all fee-based.
They're all fee-based, so you're not saving any general fund money. The commissions may like that, if you're saving.
What's that?
You're saving them overhead money, but you're not saving any general fund money.
Well, there's 213 employees representing a $12 million budget in this particular department. Is that correct? Division of Marketing Services.
I mean, that's fairly close. I think.
213 folks employed in the division for a marketing service department. I'm not knocking the number, I'm just wondering, 213 employees for
There's
four
actually,
boards and commissions. I mean,
there's 5 branches within the division. You have 2 dairy branches, milk pooling and dairy marketing.
yeah.
We have a few positions in agricultural statistics, and then we have a market enforcement branch, and the marketing branch.
Yeah, okay. But it's kind of a whole bureaucracy behind this, in other words, right? Divisions, departments. And the question is, do we need to do that? Or would the industries do better with a simple, somebody, one person or 2 doing yearly reviews and audits on boards and commissions that are required to be sent to the secretary. The secretary can make adequate decisions then. And, I mean, we're not doing reviews anyway, correct? When's the last time we did a review of the fresh cut flour commission? Why don't you give me the date that we did a review on that? Or the garlic press and onion dehydrated folks, or why don't we, ask, when's the last time we did the date commission review?
We just completed the field work on an audit of the garlic and onion dehydrated.
And what was the last time before that we did a review on that?
The fiscal and compliance audits are a fairly new program, but we are auditing every one of them.
And when did that start?
It started in 2006.
But these commissions continue to grow, correct? That's the question, right? Did we keep bringing more and more? My good friend Fiona Mott has a blueberry commission being sent over to this committee. Probably not going to be a great fate, given our hearing today. So I'm just kind of wondering why wouldn't we ask the Blueberry Commission to do what they do and allow them to continue to function without any sort of connection to CDFA and some sort of administrative way? Just wondering how that. Senator Harms, I'm sorry, Senator Harms, please, I'm sorry.
No, this is very interesting. I am going to have to leave in a minute for another meeting, and then I'll be chairing the committee. But I've been learning a lot today, and thank you, Senator Florez, for doing this. I just do have a couple of questions about this. One is, it seems as though industry groups have gotten together to do marketing boards and cooperative selling, like the walnut people and everything. And how is this different in value added from that? Because they don't do it through us, right? They just go ahead and do it because it's in their interest to market their product and keep their product, pest-free, etc. Because it does seem to me that there's a real question as to why this isn't really an industry-specific promotion activity.
The problem is, for most commodities, the commodity itself is just that, a commodity. It's hard to put your brand on one kiwi fruit. One kiwi fruit looks very similar to another kiwi fruit. So it's very difficult to establish your own private marketing program for your company that's marketing kiwi fruit. That's why there's a real value in coming together and each paying your fair share to promote kiwi fruit as an entire industry. And
so what you're saying is that kiwi producers might not choose to pay the fee into the common organization, whereas walnut producers do.
No, they each choose to pay into it by participating or voting in a marketing program. Each of these programs.
Okay, but there are some programs that work with specific commodities that aren't on the list, the kiwi list, the celery, the list of.
There are different business structures. So a cooperative is a voluntary participation and assessment. A commission is once it's voted on and it's approved by a grower, then it's a mandatory assessment on all growers or processors, however they define it throughout the state of California. So if we took them out of the department, the question would be, would they be able to continue that mandatory?
Would they wish to do it?
Right, would they wish to do it? And it does come up every couple of years where the growers vote, and sometimes they voted them out, the Tomato Commission, they voted to abolish that. Growers do vote. It's just a different structure, it's a different mechanism for growers to band together. Some want to join a co-op and create a co-op, and some want to do a commission, and some actually want to do both. And you see that with the Walnut Commission, as well as even there's talk of potentially an almond commission, but there's already Blue Diamond, the co-op. So they sometimes work together on marketing their product and increasing sales.
Now, if they do the fees, if they vote in a commission, and there's legislation that mandates the commission, does all the money come to the state and then you oversee it and return it, or
They
bill them? I am curious as to how, with all these different boards and commissions, you would pay the salaries of the 213 people that service the commissions.
Well, and it's good to note that the 213 people, only a small sliver of those actually are for the commission activities. The 213 is several branches within that. It's pooling, there's several other activities that go with that 213. But we don't actually administer the funds that these commissions collect. Their boards administer it. We audit them, and now we're doing those on every 4-year intervals, the use of those funds.
So that's basically what we do. Okay.
Does that help you?
You know, it's very hard to visualize the direct service.
Right.
I have to be honest. And I guess for me at this point, I'm like Senator Florez. You know, we are really looking at where to find billions and billions of dollars so that we can keep the school doors open.
Right.
And so everything has to be looked at. In general, I like redundant systems. Sociologists tell you they catch things, right? However, how you do management and oversight or planning in a situation where it looks as though the state may be really leading the field in many areas and can only afford to sustain certain very basic, almost life-giving kinds of functions. It really does. We do have to question, I think, all of these things. And it is, in a way, hard to visualize exactly what the value adding might be in some of these things. So I hope, that you take that in the spirit that it's offered, but the choices that we have are pretty stark.
They are very, very difficult at these times.
Thank you, Senator. Let's go back to the California performance review. I know we talked about that earlier. But the governor's, I'm going to quote out of the report, says to refocus government on essential functions, as Senator Trump just mentioned, and to redirect functions to cooperative public-private ventures. The 54 district agricultural associations and the Department of Food and Agricultural Commodity Boards will be transformed into public benefit corporations. And again, what is the rationale for either ignoring that or moving it through, or you mentioned a bill?
We did have a bill, SB 1041, that did not make it through. That would have made the fairs special districts. So, and
about the boards, the commissions that the governor mentioned here in his last, the Department of Food and Agricultural Commodity Board will be transformed into public benefit corporations.
well,
Sure,
because there's no general fund dollars in that program, I don't know what savings would occur with that.
Okay, so basically the governor asking for that was based on no incorrect or no savings, or why would the governor's office write that?
No, and
Why would they ask for us to do that?
We are evaluating, we're reevaluating all of those proposals, just as we did and just as we proposed in SB 1041.
Would you say that given the governor seems to be moving in the same direction we were today, that these are items you would not implement? I mean, in terms of the actual looking at public benefit corporations as the solution to this?
I'm not quite sure what took place after the CPR report was put out, but that is an option.
Okay, great. Not much, but now we're going back to the playbook to see if there's any sort of value in what the governor's been recommending. Let me ask the question again. So just for the record, is there any general fund dollars, taxpayer dollars being used to promote California agriculture, trips, conferences, commercial advertisement, anything within this division?
No, it's entirely funded by the commodity groups that have the program.
So you're sponsored here again by the boards and commissions.
They reimburse us for our cost and providing our oversight law.
Let's go on to let's do move on to the fairs for a moment. I'd like to talk about the governor's discussions earlier. The fairs and expositions are funded through fees and other services. But I guess the question is, why can these functions be transferred back to the county from which they're held?
And that's a proposal that we're open to discussing. And we did look at creating a special district, so we're open to discussing that. I mean,
what when you say open to discussing, that means that the spin-off of the fairs back to the counties, the funding of the different funding mechanisms for the fairs, and what does that mean?
Yeah, we're open to all options right now under the current budget situation that we're facing. So we definitely are open to that. I mean, I think these fairs do play an important role to their counties, both as entertainment venues, but as well as shelter and safety during disasters or weather conditions. But we're definitely open to those discussions.
Okay, we'll see that. Open that. Let's move on to the Reform 6, which is the transfer of animal plant health functions to the Department of Public Health. You had a very short testimony. Sorry we couldn't oblige you to the other questions. Let's go on to the animal plant health functions. I think I mentioned earlier that we ought to look at moving some of these functions to the Department of Public Health. The division has 4 offices throughout the state, and we have the states organized in medical. Can you give us a little insight on what you think? This might be the opportune time to talk a little bit about meat and poultry inspections, as well as animal health and food safety labs.
First, I will say that we work extremely close with California Department of Public Health, and animal diseases are often a surveillance for human diseases. So that's a very important relationship. However, I think it's as a core infrastructure for animal health and food safety issues surrounding the animal production units in California, our core partner is USDA. And we rely tremendously on that partnership and prioritizing our issues with USDA. Unfortunately, California Department of Public Health does not currently have a relationship with USDA. So I think that really gives us an advantage. Also, by having all of the animal programs within our division, it really leverages a culture of both safety and animal health throughout all of our programs. And that includes obviously meat, poultry, and milk and dairy food, which are core public health programs, but also our animal health programs. And our animal health programs are often an early surveillance for disease conditions or health food safety conditions in our animal products. We've had, for instance, our tuberculosis program. That's actually often diagnosed at a at a federal slaughter plant who notifies us immediately. In fact, that sample might come into our laboratory system to make the final determination. We're the only state in the country that has such a program to do it right on site in our own lab system. So we can immediately determine if that's a health risk, if it truly is tuberculosis. We can immediately notify our milk and dairy food program and make sure that those animals are not going into food supply. So it's, to me, and I have been the state veterinarian for 16 years. I've served in 4 administrations, both Republican and Democratic. I've looked at a lot of issues over the years. I know the systems that are throughout the country and most of the states, and I will tell you, if you go around the country and ask about our diagnostic system, our food safety systems, our animal health systems, we really have become a model for the nation.
Now you're saying you served under 4 administrations.
That's correct.
Okay, and you served under how many secretaries?
4 secretaries.
Okay. You tired?
Let me correct
one
one.
shift. Being under DTH and slowly what you do. I mean, have a new.
The light is at the end of the tunnel, sir.
No, I'm just saying. I mean, but to take your discussion to furthest, the last comment you made in terms of food safety. And we went through this entire gamut of change here in the legislature in order to create the Department of Public Health, and we continue to talk about the powers of public health when it comes to food safety. And you're our state vet, and so I'm wondering why that would be more synergistic in terms of the last comment you've made in terms of public health functions. You know, tell me why you couldn't do what you do, but yet do it under the Department of Public Health.
I could do it at the Department of Public Health. I don't think it would be as effective. I think having the priority of agriculture, of the food system surrounding animal agriculture at CDFA, it really is a priority. My counterparts that I work with throughout the United States are in departments of agriculture. They're at USDA, so that core infrastructure really is in place to maximize our efficiencies. It also gives us the ability, I mean, as in the plant program, our principal responsibilities at the state level are excellent surveillance systems and early detection. The diseases we handle in animal agriculture are often what we call fast-moving viral diseases. In a matter of hours and days, these viruses can spread throughout populations quickly, and if we don't have a priority to have those surveillance systems in place, it really not only puts public health in many cases, but often puts our economy at real high jeopardy.
And in terms of the comment you've made, other states having this, you're not saying that we wouldn't have a relationship with the USDA if you were shifted to another division, are you?
No, sir. But I don't know that the relationship would be as strong. Again, having plant and animal health core infrastructure at the department, with a champion for those programs, which is our Secretary of Agriculture, who has, and coming from the largest agricultural state in the country, our Secretary has direct access to the Secretary of Agriculture at USDA, as I have direct access to the Chief Veterinary Officer in USDA. So if we have a crisis, if we have an issue, if we're not getting the resources we need, we have an infrastructure that gives us both credibility and the ability to reach out for that assistance.
Well, now we do that time we're lacking money and resources.
And we have been.
If the federal secretary would like to carry the department for a year or two, that would be great, because we're trying to figure out how to find more federal dollars for programs, general funded as much as possible. I do know that there are stimulus dollars, but I'm not sure. Are we getting any stimulus dollars in the Department of Ag?
Not coming directly to the Department of Agriculture, no.
Yeah, so
one example of leveraging those resources, last year we found tuberculosis in 3 dairies in California, and this year a 4th dairy. We expended about $200,000 of additional state resources last year addressing that outbreak, which does impact both animal health and public health. USDA contributed about $20 million to that effort.
Okay, I'm not sure you're making the case, as Senator Hancock mentioned. I mean, you're saying that we spend taxpayer dollars for $200,000 more for tuberculosis in animals, and we're trying to figure out how to get kids some basic insurance, so they can actually see someone themselves to just make sure they have some dental. So, I mean, $200,000 would probably go a long way in the county, or even finding tuberculosis in kids. So I'm not sure the message is being sent that as we prioritize, we'd like those industries to pick up that $200,000 and cost not the taxpayers. And that's exactly the exercise here, is that we they're trying to find out. I mean, I'm sure any taxpayer would scratch their head and said, we spent $200,000 on tuberculosis in cows or cattle, but we couldn't spend $200,000 in, you know, the healthy family programs to keep, you know, 25 kids on coverage. Those are the choices that we're making, and I think that's the problem, is that we're trying to figure out what we should have the industries fund themselves at this point in time. Let me ask a couple of questions about, we have about $12 million of general fund going into the state's food safety laboratories. $12 million going into food safety laboratories. Does the Department of Public Health not have laboratories? I mean, do we really need $12 million to go into our laboratories at CDFA versus laboratories over the Department of Public Health?
Yeah, this is actually the Animal Health and Food Safety Laboratory. In the mid-'80s, this system was removed from the Department of Food and Agriculture and put into the University of California under the School of Veterinary Medicine at UC Davis. And the reason for that was a crumbling infrastructure of that laboratory system at that time, which was
so it's at UC Davis.
It's under the.
So why couldn't the UC system take it up?
Because the services they provide provide both a public health and animal health benefit to the state of California.
I get it.
So it's.
Why wouldn't they pay for this? I mean, have you seen their endowment lately? It's somewhat substantial versus what we are looking at. The state UC is very well funded, and even as though they raise fees, they still, their reserves seem to be, we might take a loan from them, in fact, we could. That's how well they're doing. So I'm wondering why they couldn't pick up this additional $12 million.
I don't think I can answer for you, so you can.
I mean, is there any detriment to the department if they pick this up for a couple of years?
No, I mean, if we've approached them, if you also want to approach them, we're looking at wherever we can have savings. So if someone else can pick it up, I think it is a critical infrastructure. Yeah.
That's Senator Hancock's walking from this hearing to Mr. Leno and telling him, hey, move to the conference committee, move $12 million from UC to carry a function that's important to them as well, right? UC Davis. But at the same time, might allow us to deal with our own going. I mean, that's $12 million even from a $100 million budget savings, substantial. I mean, Paul Governor said, we're at 10%, find another department that can do that. I mean, these are the kind of things.
Senator Florez, as on my way out the door, I have to comment.
Okay.
I agree with a great deal of what you said, but let me just, one of my fears in this budget situation that we're going through, quite frankly, is that we are going to end up dismantling what has been a great public university system, along with our public schools, our elementary and secondary schools. That is, you know, so I would have to put the whole thing in the context of the cuts that we're making to UC Davis and to all the other branches of the university. In that context, the question would be, is this a core piece of teaching and learning at the university? Is it something that could be picked up in part by industry? I mean, putting your division in with public health does seem to me a lot more clearly to state that the client is human health as opposed to taking care of an industry concern. So that hopefully, I would be quite interested in seeing that happen. But I would not cavalierly transfer any cost to the university at this point, because I'm very concerned about what we're doing to them in other ways.
Senator Hancock isn't going to see Mr. Leno. I will talk to Mr. Leno. So I appreciate that, Senator Hancock, and we very much share your, you mentioned that many times in cars as well. Very much appreciate your comment.
Senator, may I make one more comment?
Yes,
on the fees at the laboratory? When the laboratory was put in place, they were instructed through legislation to recoup about 10% of their costs through user fees. Currently, they're at 21% of the costs recouped. We actually go through the laboratory services they provide on a regular basis, and any service they provide that is strictly the benefit of industry, is paid fully by that industry.
Now, Connie, you said it was a 10% mandate?
Yes.
How did that work? Would someone call you and say?
No, just as part of the general operation of the laboratory, that they were asked to recoup at least 10% of their overall budget through user fees. So even though our goal is to get as many animals, as many conditions in that laboratory as we can. It's a passive surveillance system. So we work very hard on our relationship with veterinarians, with industry representatives, with community members. The exotic Newcastle disease example from 2002, 2003. Those were birds in an urban setting that a small animal veterinarian said, you got to take those to the lab. And we actually provide a free service for urban backyard poultry owners because we want sick birds in the laboratory to see if they could be carrying exotic Newcastle disease, avian influenza, because typically these viruses come in through smuggled birds, often pet birds. So our small animal veterinarian is often the first place to see those. So we want to make that as easy as possible for both veterinarians and bird owners to get a diagnosis made so we can quickly contain it. Unfortunately, and that was one of the lessons learned during exotic Newcastle disease, that virus had already existed probably for several weeks before it came to our attention because it smoldered and circulated in an urban environment before we were able to detect it.
Good point. Thank you very much. Let's go to Proposal 7, which is the transfer of food safety functions to the Department of Public Health. We obviously, within the Department of Public Health, we have a public safety function. And I'm trying to wonder, from the issue of food safety, we wanted to take functions such as inspections, food safety laboratories, and the Center for Analytical Chemistry. Why wouldn't that fit within public health? Why wouldn't you take that to the Department of Public Health? Why couldn't there be some savings or some streamlines from doing that?
In my opinion, Senator, I don't think you would experience savings and streamlining. It's not that it couldn't go to the Department of Public Health, but I think it is very important to recognize that the Milk and Dairy Food Safety Program is a very unique, very prescriptive program throughout the United States. It has oversight by FDA that does require each state to be responsible for the inspection of the animals that produce milk all the way through the handling, the transportation, and the processing. Our milk and dairy food specialists receive extensive specialized training, and the program requirements are much different than any other food manufacturing business. Our inspectors are typically at a dairy or in a processing plant on a weekly, monthly, or bi-monthly or quarterly basis, depending on the type of inspection they do, the type of samples they pick up. Our processors and producers at the farm are required to have temperature recording equipment that is checked on a regular basis. The plants are required to have pasteurizers that are both inspected and sealed by our inspectors on a quarterly basis. So it's a very prescriptive, very technically oriented. So I think moving inspectors back and forth between this program and other food programs would not generate much cost savings.
That's fair. In terms of the, we mentioned meat and poultry inspection. We spend about $3 million a year on that. Could there not be some more participation from the private sector in this, or is this simply a government?
No, that's a great question. Our program only inspects those small businesses that are exempt from federal inspection. So this is the ultimate local supply of meat. And the customers, the clients of these businesses are typically of very ethnic backgrounds. They're typically in very urban areas, and they demand a product that's a little different than what they can find at a typical grocery store. In many states that have a state meat and poultry program, they handle all the plants. They cover these, and some states like ours have by law are required to handle this program because these plants are just buyer beware as far as USDA is concerned. So we actually run the numbers, and many of these businesses would be forced to pay anywhere from tens of thousands of dollars per year if we were going to try to recoup enough money to keep the program in place. We do generate quite a bit of cost savings now because we do not, as In a federal USDA meat plant, a USDA inspector is there at government cost, full-time, anytime that plant is operating. We obviously cannot afford to do that in California. So we actually train our meat and poultry inspectors, who actually are either the owner, the manager, or an employee of the plant. They have to come to our training, we certify their training, and then our veterinarians and inspectors typically go by that plant on about a weekly basis to make sure everything is being done, the sanitation is correct, and this person that's trained has to be on site anytime an animal is processed. Now, one thing that really helps this program is very different from a federal plant, is in order to make this a legal sale, the customer comes to the plant and actually sees a live animal before it is processed. So that alone takes care of many of the concerns you might have at a typical federal plant, where any and all eligible animals have to be screened by a veterinarian.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Let's move on to our last proposed item, which is item 8, which is the transfer of weights and measures to the Department of Consumer Affairs. Just thought processes on that. Good, bad, helpful, not helpful. And that's our last issue, the consolidation, and we'll go ahead and take some public testimony. Morning. You can just take your name for the record. This is just a one performer you're thinking about, and just get your thought processes of good or bad, moving into consumer affairs, not helpful.
My name is Ed Williams. I'm the division.
Just a little closer.
Sorry. My name is Ed Williams. I'm the division director for the Division of Measurement Standards, and we don't really have. Other than not seeing a place where there would be cost savings if the existing structure remained, we don't see any difference in the structure.
So this would be the example of just simply shifting a function to another department, but yet still having the specialized folks with no cost savings. You'd be doing this somewhere else. Somebody else could.
Yeah, we don't see the cost savings in moving it to DCA. It's about $2 million in general fund for a $9 million program.
Okay. And so the question is then, do you cease to exist if we have no CDFA? In other words, you go to another department, you still do what you do.
Not based on the proposal that is before us.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I think that's it, Rain. Let me say that I think you should ask the secretary for a portion of the salary today, because you've done a great job at laying out the priorities and issues surrounding CDFA. I think it's a hard thing when you look at your department and try to figure out what more you can put on industry to carry. And I do know how important Pearson's disease is. We very much know all of the eradication issues are the paramount of concern to the industry and to you, because your job, as you said, is to protect the industry. At least that's in the charge. And the question that we have in this budget is simply, what can we spin off as much as possible? When the governor wants to sell, workers' compensation, the entire department should tell you that we're not alone, and try to figure out what we can spin off. And that's $1 billion. The governor looks at state fund and says, can we spin it off? And I'm sure that there are folks there who worry about whether or not that's doable or not. But in our little realm here of food and agriculture, the simple question to us is, what can we afford to pay for? What can industry carry the burden on even more so, and particularly on items that are general fund funded? And you do have some big items there, some small items and big items. You have a $13 million overhead. You're going to look at that. Of course, the government normally takes care of that with 10% across the board. But on the programs that we've mentioned, the question is, what can you ask industry to pare down with? And then what can you spin off to other areas that make a lot more sense, like pesticide regulation? We look forward to working with you more on it. We'd like you to take our ideas and tell us, score it if it's even possible, and we'll try to score it as well with our finance folks. Do you have anything to say in closing, and then we'll go ahead and adjourn? Oh, we're going to actually have public testimony. Sorry.
No, I think you bring up a very important question. I think it is critical. We are asking that question at these times, is what can we pare back on? Who can pick up the costs? I think this hearing has been very good for the department in evaluating our important role and really figuring out how to articulate that to the average consumer. So I think this has been a very good exercise, and the department looks forward to working with you and seeing where else we can make savings.
Great.